But I'm freezing. Said it in my last video and I'll say it again. This sucks. Whoa! That's better. It's a week later and I am on the beach in Portugal. It's fairly sunny, it's not raining, it's warm enough that a t-shirt is all we need, and I'm starting to feel like life is getting unfucked just like I promised it would be. So today I'm going to talk about my first steps to international living, how I got started doing this, and what the lessons were that I learned in the early days. So stick with me, my name is Chris, and this is the Gnomecast. So I meet a lot of people who are jealous, curious about my lifestyle, and they ask me, how did it begin? What's the first step if you want to be an international nomad? And basically, I blame my father. It started when I was about 9-10 years old, and I'd been away for a week on I think it was the Cub Scouts, some kind of camping adventure. And I got food poisoning on the final day and all kinds of nightmares. Came back very late, and my family were planning another week away. Like the moment I arrived back, we were supposed to all jump in the car and drive off to Wales for a week. And because of the delay, my mother had loaded the kids into the car. She'd gone, left me alone with my father for the evening. And I woke up the next morning feeling right as rain. It was all good. And he said, right, come on son, I'm going to teach you something new. And we took a bus to the edge of town. And then he stood there by the side of the road and he made this gesture like this. And very soon a car stopped and picked us up and took us, 10, 20 miles down the road, I don't remember. This was like really cool. And then he jumps out of the car and I jump out of the car and he stands by the road again on the next road, and he makes the gesture again and another car stops. And we did this probably 100 miles. We travelled from the north of England up to the far corner of North Wales. And I remember making a list of all the different kinds of cars that I'd had a ride in. There was a big Land Rover, a Morris Marina, and there was a big bus, like a 52-seater luxury tour bus with no tourists on it. And that bus, we were diverted because there was a forest fire, and I can remember the volunteers directing traffic and looking really stressed and explaining that we had to go some other route. So it was a really cool adventure for a 10-year-old kid. And of course we get there in the evening to where we're supposed to be and it's all good. But that had that memory. And then some years later we actually moved to quite a rural area, and I was living in a house on a hill miles from town, and I was old enough that my parents would just tell me to walk if I wanted to go anywhere. So I would walk down these little country lanes and you'd hear cars coming behind you and you kind of look around to see, is it a neighbour, is it somebody I know? And it just seemed natural to put your thumb out and try and get a ride. So that's what I did. And then one day I was talking with like a school friend. We wanted to do something, go somewhere, we had no transport, so we went and stood on the road out of town and we made the sign and we got to where we were going, and it just kind of became, well, I'm a teenage lad, if I want to go somewhere I'll try hitchhiking. And by the time I was about 19, I was ready to go further afield. I'd heard stories of people who'd managed to hitch rides on French lorries going across the channel and into France, and all this kind of stuff, and I thought, well, I'll give that a go. So I went and hitchhiked for about 3 months around Europe. I never did get that free ride across the English Channel on the ferry, but had a lot of other cool adventures and free rides and fun stuff happened. And I had travelled way down into Morocco and the Sahara Desert, and then up and all the way across the other way and over into Turkey, eastern Turkey, Kurdistan. Didn't even know it was a war zone. and then back and up north and into northern Europe, and I crossed the Iron Curtain into eastern Germany. I went through Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin. I did all these really cool things before I was even 20 years old. And you know, I would come back and everybody I knew was just super jealous because I was this incredible world traveling guy, and I would go off then. I went hitchhiked a couple of years later right across America from New York to Los Angeles. I had just the most incredible adventures, and then I would come home, and I would always come home. And I think I mentioned this in my previous video, that I was trying to be a normal member of society. I eventually gave up this irresponsible going off traveling, bought a house, settled down, became normal for a bit, and I screwed it up. I made a lot of bad decisions, got into a lot of debt, huge problems, and I was stuck. I was just working like crazy just to repay my bank, and I wasn't making enough money to keep the bank happy. And there was no job out there that I could find that would enable me to keep the bank happy, so I was sinking further and further. There was no way out, and eventually one day I posted the keys to the house back through the letterbox, and I picked up my little bag that thankfully I had brought out through the front door before I left, and I caught the bus to the edge of town, and I stood there and I put my thumb out, and I was in France that night. And then I just was gone, and I was starting my life again, because I knew from the age of 9 or 10 years old that if you really need to get somewhere, there's always somebody who will give you a hand. You can always find some way to get moving. I think there's a line in a TV show.
When you can't run, you crawl. And when you can't crawl, when you can't do that, you find someone to carry you.
So of course I talk to people about hitchhiking, and their immediate response is, well, but what if something goes wrong? You might get kidnapped and raped and murdered. And gotta be honest here and say that I had a couple of difficult experiences in certain specific parts of the world, and you have to fight people off, and you bail out of the car, and it's a complete nightmare, and you're terrified, and then you're standing by the side of the road with very little money and no transport options. So what do you do then? You're stuck. You're in the middle of bloody nowhere, or standing by the side of a motorway or something, and you've got to get away, and the only way is to use the magic thumb and try to stop another car and get moving. And of course, you can buy a knife, something to defend yourself with. So what do you do then? You're stuck. You're in the middle of bloody nowhere, or standing by the side of a motorway or something, and you've got to get away, and the only way is to use the magic thumb and try to stop another car and get moving. And of course, you can buy a knife, something to defend yourself with, but I picked up this vagabond hitchhiker, and he tried to rob me, and I tried to defend myself, and then he knifed me. What are the police going to believe? Seems to me that if you're going to take that option of violence as a way of managing risk, you're going to end up in jail, and apparently there's a lot of sodomy in those places, so you're actually going to be worse off than if you didn't. So that's not really an option. But what you do learn is, I'm not going to get in that car. You learn to spot the warning signs. So there's a certain amount of life experience and wisdom, if you like, that informs your decision about whether or not, and you've got to make a snap decision. And at the same time, while you're analysing somebody and deciding if it's safe to get in a car with them, there's the question of, well, maybe I do want to get in the car, but they're not going to let me in now because they think I'm standoffish and rude and judgmental. So it's a really difficult fine line to judge. And the key to it is that you mustn't be under pressure. If you're in a really bad location and you haven't seen a car for 2 hours and you're desperate to get away from where you are, you'll get in a car with anyone. If you're on a motorway service station in Germany and there's cars stopping every 10 minutes and there were 20 hitchhikers in a line before you and they've all got away easily, you can afford to say no and wait for somebody that looks a little bit less dodgy. So that brings me to the real secret of hitchhiking, which is to manage your situation, your environment, and your communication with people before the car even stops. So somebody picked me up one day and said, yeah, I don't normally pick up hitchhikers, but you reminded me of my son. You're reasonably well dressed, you look presentable, you're carrying a backpack, you're obviously going somewhere. You could easily be a student going back to university or going to visit friends or something. And pleasant middle-aged people in nice cars are exactly the kind of person that you want to be getting a ride from. So if you just present yourself in the right way, you're increasing the number of those kind of people that stop for you. Now if you're standing there in a pair of tight leather shorts and I've not got a shirt on and I've written my "I'm going here" on my chest in lipstick, I'm going to get picked up by a different kind of person. So you got to present yourself in the right way first of all, so that you're attracting the right kind of people and putting off the wrong kind of people. So that's important. And then you've got to be in the right place. You've got to be, on a road where people can see you in advance. They've got a space to stop. They can pick you up. They can take you to, they have a chance to have a communication with you without putting themselves in danger, without slowing down the traffic, getting into trouble. So picking your spot is really important. And of course, when you get out of that car, you want to be getting out of that car in the right kind of spot. So again, a motorway service station is ideal because that's kind of laid out in such a way that gives you loads of advantages. So you're in a car, you know where they're going, you might have to get out of that car 10-20 miles before they reach their destination, because this is a good spot for you to be hitchhiking and get your next ride. And this is especially true if somebody's going to a particular town. Well, you don't want to be in the centre of that town unless you're going to spend the night and do sightseeing and stuff. If your aim is just to keep moving, you do not want to have to walk following the road signs, trying to find your way to the road out of town and trying to find your spot. You want to get out beforehand and find somebody who's going all the way through beyond the town to somewhere that's going to help you get on your way. So these kind of little tricks, this strategy of hitchhiking, if you like, puts you in a position where you can enjoy all the benefits. You can get the rides, you can get to where you want to go, you can make a lot of miles in a day, but you're minimizing the risk. The bad stuff basically stops happening to you just if you know what you're doing. You've put yourself in a position where you can make good decisions, and then you make the good decisions. So it's really very simple. It's a risk management issue where when you're standing by the side of the road, it seems like you're out of control, but really what you're doing is you're creating options for things to happen. And then the more options you create, the more choices you have, and then you can choose the best one. For example, I told that story in my previous video about me being stranded in the middle of France on this long straight country road disappearing into the distance, and it's a crossroads and there's no cars, no houses, no trees, no shelter, no nothing, and there's just this line of rain coming towards me and I'm just gonna get absolutely drenched. And yeah, that's a pure moment, it's really exciting, you'll remember that for the rest of your life. The really cool thing was like I saw a car pass coming along, and I tried to stop the car, and he just ignored me. And then I saw like glowing headlights in the rain. It was a car coming the other way. This was in the days when French cars had yellow headlights, so it's this kind of warm, cozy glow looming out of the rain, and then this car burst out of this curtain of rain, comes barreling up the road towards me, and I ran across the road and put my thumb out, because when you're in a shit place, you're better off just getting somewhere better rather than insisting on going where you think you should be going. Just get away, just find a better place. And then another car came, again going in my direction towards the rain, and it was a Renault Fuego. It was blue, and this guy just hammered past me without slowing down, without acknowledging me, and he had 2 kids in the back of the car, about 9-10 years old, a bit like me when I was first discovering hitchhiking. And I remember these kids just staring at me as we passed without any flicker of interest or recognition. They're on one side of the glass window of the car, I'm on the other, close enough to touch almost, and a million miles away. There was just no connection, no humanity, no nothing, and I have never felt so alone as I did in that moment. And I watched this car disappearing into the rain, which was getting really close, and I just felt utterly despondent. And then I saw a car coming out of the rain, you know, the yellow headlights, cozy glow, fantastic, let's try it. And I'm picking up my bag to cross the road. This car comes out of the rain, and it's the same car. And this guy had hit the rain, and he suddenly realised that poor fucker back there is going to get absolutely drenched. And he'd stopped the car, turned around, and he came back for me and picked me up, and we rode 2 or 3 hours together. We stopped in a cafe. He told me all about La France Profonde. It was a brilliant, really brilliant ride. We did really well. And then that night, or maybe another night very similar, same part of the world anyway, and this little car comes towards me, one of the old deux chevaux, beautiful little old French car, and this guy's driving towards me, and I couldn't tell. Normally I can tell with traffic which way they're going to go, even if they're not indicating. So I was like, this way, hang on, this way, yeah, oh fuck it. And eventually I put both hands up, both thumbs out, don't care where you're going, and the guy just came to a stop right in front of me, and we had a bit of a chat, and I got in the car, we carried on down this little road, and then he turns off and he says, oh, you want to come and visit my uncle? Okay. And we go up the hill, and a windy road, up and up and up, and his uncle was the caretaker of a castle, massive, beautiful French chateau. And we ended up sitting in the kitchen late at night. It's this massive kitchen, huge copper pots hanging on the wall. This is for catering for hundreds of people, this kitchen. And we're sitting there drinking wine and eating French bread and sausages and cheese, and just generally, you know, living the authentic French experience, if you like. Brilliant. And then he says, oh, so where are you gonna sleep? I don't know, guess I need to get back on the road. He said, no, you stay here, it's no problem. And we go up the stairs, up the spiral staircase to the top of the tower, and there's this huge bedroom with a 4-poster bed. This incredible luxury room. And I spent the night there, and I woke up the next morning and I opened the curtains, and I'm the king of the world, looking out over my domain, this valley that is dominated by this little castle. And it was just beautiful, really amazing, cool experience. And then an hour later I'm standing by the side of the road again, wondering where I'm going to be that day, where I'm going to sleep, what's going to happen, and putting myself in a position where I can create that possibility, where there's an option there that could be what happens to me tonight. And you can only do that if you're not afraid of the downside, if you can manage the risk, deal with the downside, then you can have the good side, then you can have the fun. So there you have it, an origin story telling you how I unfucked my life, and also a life lesson about basically the secrets of life. And it's about managing your luck. You put yourself out there and create opportunities for things to happen. You do what you can to swing the odds in favor of the good stuff instead of the bad stuff. You rely on your ability to deal with the bad stuff when it does happen, because that's an inevitable part of life. And then you get to enjoy all of the good things that nobody else gets because they're too busy staying safe at home and living their lives on autopilot, trying to achieve something.